Test, test, Ivarecha Adonai Vayishmerecha. Okay, good. And you've muted me? morning. Good morning, and I'm Reverend Joanna. Welcome home. Welcome home after this week of freezing trees and frozen roads, and children home with us from school all week. I am so glad that you survived. And I hope that we can lean on each other as we work through our brains trying to make sense of the fact that it is bright and sunny and warming up today, and 3 days ago it was what it was then. Unitarian Universalism is unambiguously, unapologetically progressive. This church affirms the inherent worth and dignity of all people through anti-racism, anti-oppression, supporting the LGBTQIA+ community, working for reproductive justice, voting rights, and other issues as needed. We seek to build beloved community not only here, but also out in our surrounding area. And if you are new to Live Oak, today we will have, right after the service, our Exploring Membership Gathering in room 208. You are invited to that so that you can learn a little bit more about Live Oak and Unitarian Universalism. And we bring a spirit of joy to all that we do. It is so good to be together this morning. Would you please rise, either in body or in spirit, for our opening hymn, Abide With Me.
Welcome to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Mark Anderson, and one thing that I love about Live Oak is the ability to participate in this loving community while freely seeking and nurturing my individual spiritual beliefs. I'd like to welcome our guests this morning. If this is your first time here, please stop by our visitor's desk so that we can meet you and answer any questions you might have. As part of our mission, we want to enhance the connections between each of us and also with the outside world. You can stay connected with everything happening at Live Oak through our weekly email newsletter. There's a link on our homepage. And during this worship service, there's no need to put your phone away. We encourage you to post on social media things you hear today, perhaps even an invitation for a friend to join you next week. Today, our chalice at Live Oak is being lit by Kalmia. And now, here and at home, let us light our chalices with these words by Martha Kirby Capo. For some, the chalice cup is a communion cup, freely offered to all who would seek the greater truth. Others see the circle of fellowship in its embracing sides, the sacred hoop of its rim, the ambient energy cradled in its basin, the abiding grounded strength of its pedestal. May all be lit by the fire of spiritual integrity. So too, may we each be bathed in the glow of our shared truth, multifaceted and radiant. This is a congregation bound not by creed, but by covenant. May those in agreement affirm this covenant now. We affirm a caring community of and for all ages, seeking wisdom, doing service, and living with integrity. In our diversity, our covenant holds us in unity as we celebrate our shared spiritual journey.
A special part of Unitarian Universalist Sunday services is the time of sharing joys and sorrows. And I think of it as the time where we keep vigil for one another, where we give each other the gift of being present for those among us who have had some special milestone in their own personal lives this previous week, or some particular joy or sorrow that it's important for the congregation to know. And today, Henley shares the concern. My concern is that I've been sick for a week, but I'm fine now. Kim Ono shares that Lee Collins wants you to know that her endoscopy showed that her pancreas is holding up remarkably well. Linda McCullough shares, our building flooded right at Christmas time, our trees have been devastated, power out, and still we gather today. Life is good. I would quote one of my favorite philosophers, Willie Nelson, "I'm not wet and I'm not cold and I'm not hungry, so classify these as good times." And speaking of good times, our director of music, Curtis White, shares, "Super joyful about my 1-year anniversary with Live Oak. Super thankful, looking forward to the next." Can you feel the love? Often, what is heavy on our hearts when we come in here are our own fears that we have fallen short. We know that we have left undone those things which we ought to have done, and we have done those things which we ought not to have done. May we have the courage to be honest with ourselves, the willingness to make amends, and the compassion to accept forgiveness from others and from ourselves, trusting in the assurance that imperfection is expected, and love is the guiding and healing force with which we can align our lives. Make us aware we are a sanctuary, each made holy and loved right through. With thanksgiving, we are alive. time of wonder today. I would like to invite any kids who want to come forward. Kids of all ages, if you want to see a little closer what I'm going to be showing today. So, does anyone know what these are? Yeah. Very good. You are skipping ahead. Yes, you're seeing symbols of different religions. And these objects, any adults know the actual Russian name for them? Say it again. Matryoshki. Did I get it? Okay. Or Russian nesting dolls. So today, these are representing me. So does anyone, I'm not a very good artist, but does anyone know what that symbol is? A humanist. Oh, okay, can we have a round of applause? Fabulous. Right, this is the symbol for humanism. And when I was little, my parents were Unitarian humanists. And so they didn't teach me about God because that wasn't part of their beliefs, but they did teach me about human capability and human responsibility, the fact that we can do so many things. And so as a very little child, I was a humanist because my parents were. Now, can anyone, I hope, identify this? Live oak, very good. Right, it's a Unitarian Universalist chalice. So, when I was a child, we began going to a Unitarian Universalist church. And so there, I learned all about Unitarian Universalism. And so I began considering myself to be a UU. Now, what about this? No? Christianity, a cross right here. Yes, when I was in middle school, my best friend Dana was a member of the United Church of Christ, which we do a lot with. It's kind of, it's almost like our sister religion, except that they are expressly Christian, but they're a lot like UUs. So I went to summer camp with her, and I got a lot out of it. And I got a lot out of Christianity. I was in middle school at this time, and so I started considering myself to be a Christian. Anyone know what this symbol is? Pagan, right. Everyone see? So this is a pentacle. So when I was in my 20s, first it actually started with fiction. I read a book by Marion Zimmer Bradley. Someone here knows that. Mist of Avalon, yes. Yes, we do have some issues with Marion Zimmer Bradley, but we didn't at the time. So that was what exposed me to the whole idea that God could also be seen as a goddess. And so I started learning more about that, and I got books about Wicca. And then I moved to Houston, and I became part of what we called a goddess group, and it was a neo-pagan group. And so I considered myself to be Wiccan or pagan. Now, this is a little bit harder one. What? What do you think it might be? What does it kind of look like? It kind of looks like a candy cane. Anyone else? I will give you the hint. It comes from Christianity. Christmas. I am a big Christmas lover. Not really. Anyone? Shepherd's crook. There we go. Shepherd's crook. So, when I was in my 30s, I went to seminary. And the seminary is a graduate school for people who want to become ministers. And so while I was there, I was at a Christian seminary, and I did not turn Christian, but I got exposed to all of these scholars. Now, who knows what a scholar is? What's a scholar?
It's a person who,
Knows a lot. Yeah, it's people who study things. They don't just come up with ideas out of their heads, right? They study books, they educate themselves. All right, yes. Thank you very much. We got a lot of scholars right up here. And so I got to hear what scholars said about Christianity. I got to learn, including from some Unitarian Universalist scholars, about things like, you know, the cross. The cross was not used as a symbol of Christianity for quite a while. In the early church, they used symbols like Jesus as a shepherd and paradise and things like that. And so it exposed me to this whole new idea of what Christianity could be. And specifically, it introduced me to something called missionalism, which is the idea that we're here not to try and get people to believe a certain way, but to go out and try and make the world better. Okay, oops, and I forgot to put this one in. There we go. Now, what are some of the things you see on here? Yeah. Very good. Buddhism, the Buddhism wheel. Anyone else see any symbols they recognize? The humanist, exactly. And Sikhism and Hinduism. So there's a whole lot of different symbols. And I would say this is kind of where I am right now. And it's what I'm going to be talking about today. In Unitarian Universalism, we are a big tent religion, and so we can pull from all different religious faiths. But here's the big thing I want you to notice. What happened to all those other things that I was? They're all still inside me. I didn't have to throw them away because I was a Unitarian Universalist through all of this. When I considered myself to be a Christian, I also was still a UU. When I was a pagan, I was still a UU. And I'm still a UU today.
It's like Unitarian has all of those in them.
She said it's like Unitarian Universalism has all of those in them. Yes. And y'all can go back to your seats now. Thank you for your help.
Are in spirit for hymn number 343, A Fire Mist and a Planet.
A fire mist, a planet, a crystal and a cell, a starfish and a saurian, and caves where ancients dwelt. The sense of law and beauty, a face turned from the sod. Some call it evolution, and others call it God. Like tides on crescent sea beach, when moon so new and thin, into our hearts so yearnings come welling, surging in. Come from the mystic ocean, whose rim no foot has trod. Some people call it longing, and others call it God. A century lone and frozen, a mother starved for brood, and Socrates read hymlock, and Jesus on the road, and millions who, though nameless, the straight hard pathway trod. Some call it consecration, and others call it God.
reading this morning is Every Third Thursday by Joanna Crawford. Every third Tuesday, I am a Buddhist. I empty my mind and lighten my heart and try to let go of attachments. Every other Friday, I am a Christian. I look for the least of these and try to love God and my neighbor. The full moon of the month finds me Wiccan. I honor the dual nature of God and find my rhythm as maiden, mother, or crone. On the 15th of the month, I am humanist. I respect science, integrity of fellow humans, and all that we have learned and have made. Every fourth Wednesday, I am Hindu. I take a breath and understand that what is unfinished now will remain for me to continue next life. On alternate Fridays, I am Jewish. May Adonai bless you and keep you, I tell my children, softly touching each head. And the Thursdays and the Mondays and the Saturdays and Sundays and all the other days in between find me reading or listening or watching philosophers, Muslims, Mormons, Baha'i, and more fill my heart, touch my soul. And yet, the one thing that none of these provide to me is the certitude that they are the one. They lend me wisdom, sing to my heart, cause me to question, help me find answers, make me more me, and at the end of the day, every day, I am Unitarian Universalist. In parcel and in pledge, and with all my heart, all my soul, all my mind, and all my strength, I honor this faith, I hold it close, and it lets me run free.
Why should any of us be confined within a single area of religious culture? When I read Amos and Jeremiah, I say, would to God I were a Jew. When I read the parable of the Good Samaritan, I say, would I were a Galilean. When I read the 13th of 1 Corinthians, I wish with all of my heart that I might be a Christian after the manner of the Apostle Paul. When I think of Buddha and his eightfold path, I say I too would be a Buddhist. And when I remember the trial of Socrates, I say in awe but with exalted spirit, oh, that I might be so brave a humanist. And thus at the end, there is nothing I can say but that like Emerson and Channing, I want to live with the privilege of the illimitable mind. And that was said by Unitarian A. Powell Davies. This is the gift that we have been given from our theological ancestors, the gift of the illimitable mind. And this gift did not come smoothly or easily. There was resistance all along the way. The first resistance came from the outside. As the Unitarians and the Universalists here in the United States in the 1700s and 1800s were forming themselves into denominations, there was the question, can you be a Unitarian, can you be a Christian and be a Unitarian, be a non-Trinitarian? Can you be a Christian and believe in things like reason and tolerance and not believe in things like the theology of the atonement, that Jesus died for your sins? Can you be a Christian if you believe in universal salvation, if you do not believe in eternal hell? And there were many Orthodox Christians happy to say, no, you cannot. But these brave Unitarians and Universalists, because we did not come together as one faith until 1961, they said, in effect, you do not get to gatekeep Christianity. They didn't use the word gatekeep, I'm sure, but they would have if it was in common usage, if they had thought of it. They said, we will answer in the affirmative. Yes, you can. After that, though, all of the resistance was coming from within, because right after that, starting in about the 1850s, the question was, can you be a Unitarian or a Universalist and not be a Christian? There were arguments, there were fights, there was resistance, but ultimately we answered in the affirmative, yes. Shortly after that came the question, can you be a Unitarian or a Universalist and not believe in God? There were arguments, there were fights, there was resistance, but ultimately we answered in the affirmative, yes, you can. Now, because the history of Unitarian Universalism is one where we swing from one extreme to the other, why do we do that? I don't know, but we have to do that before we find our place. We then had to switch to the opposite question, and many of us lived through this because this lasted from about the 1950s on into the 1990s, and it was, can you be, we had joined by then, can you be a Unitarian Universalist and believe in God? Some of you know what I'm talking about because you were there for it, right? There were fights, there were arguments, there was resistance, but ultimately we answered in the affirmative, yes, because our faith is one of constantly expanding, keeping true to our values, but allowing the transient issues of what we believe to become less important and not what we are centered around. I believe that we are on the precipice of truly being able to be the big tent religion that so many Unitarians and Universalists and Unitarian Universalists have envisioned. And I think that we have gotten to this place, actually not because of anything theological, but in recent times, it was two things from the social sciences that have allowed this to happen. In 1981, James Fowler's book, Stages of Faith, was published. Has anyone ever heard of this one? Do we have some people? Those who have studied human growth and development, you may have run across this. James Fowler had studied human growth and development. He had studied people like Jean Piaget, Erik Erikson, which talk about standard stages of development that humans go through psychologically. And he studied faith and how it applies to faith. And Unitarian Universalists, when we started reading this, we went, I I receive this. This feels very familiar, especially to those who had come to Unitarian Universalism, and that is the majority of y'all from other faiths. So there's actually a stage 0 first, and that's infants, newborns to about age 2. And what they're learning about faith is based on what they are experiencing. If they have loving families, then that is starting to plant the seeds for what their beliefs will be. But stage 1 is called intuitive projective faith. So that's about pre-K to age 7. And so for this age group, it's very focused on experiences. When you're bringing your kids to church and they're doing the same kind of rituals over and over again, we are beginning to plant the seeds of Unitarian Universalism with them, because kids at this age, as you know, are very hands-on. When you come to our worship services, a big reason why we have certain songs that we sing every week was because of the suggestion of our Director of Lifespan Faith Development, because she studies these things and she knows these things, and she says it's important for children at this age to have these things that are repeated, these rituals that are repeated every week. And I would add, it's not bad for the rest of us either, right? So we light our chalice and we have certain songs and certain things that we say every week. So this is all about it's continuing the whole thing of experiencing faith. And the children are starting to develop a sense of morality, of right and wrong. So the next stage is mythic literal faith, and this goes roughly about age 7 to age 12. And this is where things are seen in very concrete ways. They are like things like right and wrong. It's because right is right and wrong is wrong, right? Definitely a sense of justice or injustice. It's often seen as very reciprocal. And stories are seen in a very literal way. If you are in a Christian church and you teach about Noah, it's going to be understood in a literal way. Fowler makes a point of saying some people stay in this stage their entire lives. They do. Stage 3 is called synthetic conventional faith. So this is roughly up to about age 18. Again, it can also go your entire life. And so this is where identity becomes, and again, we are speaking in broad generalities. If you're sitting there going, not me, okay, not you, but in broad generalities, identity is very important in this stage. And so this is the stage where if a person is having cognitive dissonance, they will often ignore it or suppress it because their sense of identity, and especially group identity, is the priority. And outward authorities, not authority inside, but outward authorities become very important at this point. Right is right because the Bible said so, or the pastor said so. There's always an external authority. And then we have stage 4. And that's where people come to a UU church. Not just that. Stage 4, I mean, it's really like, let me say this. Please, with me, because I'm doing the hard work too, fight the urge to be arrogant about this. Because I will say we all have our own weaknesses when it comes to faith development. But stage 4 is when it becomes too difficult to deal with the cognitive dissonance. And this is when people start struggling. They start turning to themselves as an authority, and they start rejecting things that they have been taught. It is a very, in general, uncomfortable stage. There can be a lot of anger. Why did you teach me this thing? And I would say especially if it involved emotional things like a belief that you were going to hell. This is an uncomfortable stage to be in. This is what is popularly called right now deconstruction. We've been doing deconstruction for decades, centuries. This is where people will often throw away things. They'll say, that can't literally be true. And what we discovered within Unitarian Universalism is that until this time, that is often where we would stop with faith development. In fact, back in those days, we didn't call it faith development. We called it religious education, right? Just religious education. We still use the term, but it was just religious education, like it was a very intellectual thing, kind of impersonal. You learn about all these other different religions, but you're too smart to believe any of those things, right? Fowler's work made us realize there's 2 more stages to go. And it changed how we do faith development. Because stage 5 is what is called conjunctive faith. When we reach stage 5, this is where we become more comfortable with embracing ambiguity. This is where we start looking at things, we start looking at metaphors and seeing them not as literal stories, but as metaphors that can somehow, in a poetic way, enable us to get closer to truth. This is where we are drawing on our own authority, but, and this is where a UU church is very important, or any church that encourages questioning and wondering. The big work that's done here is done in community. Because at this stage, we no longer have that reactiveness of you believe differently than me and feeling that it affects us, feeling that we have to, put down that other person. At this stage, we go, oh, wow, you believe differently than me? Tell me more about that. Because we know that hearing about someone else's beliefs allows us to deepen ours. Sometimes it'll be because they have a really good idea. Sometimes it'll be because they have an idea that completely we reject. But both bring us spiritual growth. And then stage 6, very, very few, it is hypothesized by Fowler, very, very few people get to stage 6. This is universalizing faith. This is when you devote your entire life to making the world better for others. As my colleague, Reverend Susan Smith says, be sure and tell us if you feel that you are approaching stage 6, because historically, that is when people come to kill you. Stage 6 is Jesus, it's Gandhi, it's MLK, but it still gives us a vision to work toward. So I think that was one of the big things that help us get to where we are now in terms of becoming a big tent religion. The second thing, this is not going to surprise anyone who knows me when I put it up. Oh, not that one. Okay, that will surprise you. So this is actually, forgot that. To let you know, yes, James Fowler's book came out in 1981. There are definitely some things. It came out, he was working on this in the 70s. There are definitely some fair critiques to it. But now Unitarian Universalism, and notably through Joy Berry, who is a religious educator for the UUA, is working at, okay, what does this mean within Unitarian Universalism? And she has come up with these very short, one word for each stage up to 5, which is faith is caught, taught, bought, sought, and wrought. Wrought being stage 5. Okay, but the thing that won't surprise you, systems theory. So, for those who don't know me, Bowen systems theory is something you will hear a lot about here in church. But it's not just me. Starting in the late 1980s, you had people like Peter Steinke, who had been a student of Thomas Friedman, who had been a student of a man named Murray Bowen, who came up with the whole framework of Bowen family systems theory. And even if you haven't heard of it, you know it because it's where we get the terms like boundaries and triangulation. And so Peter Steinke took this and said, I bet you could apply this to church systems as well. And so we started putting things into our leadership development classes, and it began, by the 90s, it was something that if you were a UU, you were going to be hearing about this in some way. And key to us being a big tent religion is this: self-differentiation. Self-differentiation means that we know where we end and another person begins, and we work to be our fully expressed self, while also honoring that everyone else gets to be their fully expressed self. And so once we understand that this is a value of our faith, self-differentiation, then when someone is in stage 3 or stage 4 or stage 5, and by the way, these are not like one linear thing and then you're done. Like if you're sitting there and being like, I'm in stage 5, I'm good, there are going to be little things that will pop up and you will find yourself back in stage 3 or stage 4 and needing to grapple with. Self-differentiation allows us to honor the fact that we are one community and we all benefit from each other's wisdom, and we also have the responsibility for our own personal spiritual journeys. And if someone believes in God or doesn't believe in God, that's their journey. And we can honor that. It doesn't mean that we have to double down and prove ours. Now, one of the big things that also began happening, I would say really about, 10 years ago, it's fairly recent, is one of our principles, as you know, is that we affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And at a certain point we said, we talk an awful lot about the free search for truth and meaning. What does responsible mean in our context? And so one of the big things that we started refocusing on was something that the rest of our society was starting to pay attention to, and that was the matters of appropriation, right? That it's not okay if we have no Jewish members, it's not okay for us to do a Passover dinner and take it as our own, adapt it as, this is a UU Passover dinner. And I will tell you, there are things in our past that will absolutely make us cringe. When we know better, we do better. And it is the height of arrogance for us to look back at something and go, well, they should have been back then where I am now. We got here because of the collective wisdom of other people. And so we started looking at things like appropriation and closed practices. And I don't know who has ever said buffet about this religion. I know that I have, so I'm not pointing at you, because I know there have been times when I have said, it's like a buffet. You can just take what you want and leave the rest. And now we know, no. Part of a responsible search for truth and meaning is that we don't try to have a faith that is a mile wide and an inch deep. We take the things that speak to us and we go deep with them. We don't accept just a pop definition of something. If you say that you believe in karma, do you really? What does that mean? What does it mean in Hinduism? What does it mean when someone dies unfairly? We are to struggle with all the aspects of our faith. But see, this is one of the other characteristics of being in stage 5 of faith development, is whereas in stage 4 it was very uncomfortable and painful, in stage 5 it can become exhilarating. Because we've learned now that we can make it through those struggles and emerge in a better place. Emerge with a faith that is deeper, something we can hold on to. I don't believe that we are where we can be in terms of a big tent religion. I think that we have made so much progress. I think that we already can realize some of it. We can enjoy some of being a big tent religion. But I also believe that we have some steps to go. Number one is owning that Unitarian Universalism is a religion. It is a religious choice. This is not a blank slate with no history, with no theology. And I would say, and being like having some ownership in it, knowing our past and owning some of that. When someone even if we are not Christians, I do not identify as a Christian. If someone says, how do you define Christian? And the definition comes from orthodoxy, like, oh, you have to believe that Jesus died for your sins. No, I do not receive that. I reject that. Now, that's me personally. But I do think that there is something about finding our own beliefs in relationship with our religious past. Second is prioritizing generosity versus comfort and preferences, right? Because we are still a very white, Protestant-affected religion. If we want to be a bigger tent, then we have to be able to put down what makes us feel comfortable, whether it is music choices or how we are in church together. And fight white supremacy within the church. Let me define white supremacy real quick to make sure we're all on the same page. I'm not talking about an idea that there are secretly, Klansmen hidden in the pews. White supremacy is a very simple idea, and it is the knowledge that our culture prioritizes things that have traditionally come out of white culture and seen them as more valuable or more wise than things from non-white cultures. And it sees them as normal or neutral, right? Like a hamburger is normal, but gochujang is exotic. And so it's paying attention and being able to see where we are doing that, because for those of us who have grown up white, that's just what we have lived with, is we have always been told that our normal is the normal. And so if we are truly going to be that big tent religion, we have to start being aware of this and fighting this, whether it is in our music choices or how we do community. And we'll be talking more about that's a whole theme of series right there. Point is, we get to realize we are the now and not yet of big tent religion. We get to experience it right now. We get to celebrate it right now, and there is even more progress to come. The big thing is, can we continue to answer in the affirmative? I invite you now to join me in a time of reflection in word and silence. Make yourself a little bit more comfortable, settle in. If it helps you to close your eyes so you can go inward, feel free to do that. This is honoring our ancestors, and it was written by my friend Alondria Williams, who left us much too soon. The history and legacy of Unitarian Universalism are shaped by the ancestors in our congregations. I came as a fourth grader to my congregation, the Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. That community helped bring me into social justice struggles in the world around me and inside the UUA. My church opened so many doors because they held young people in high esteem and encouraged our leadership in the church and community. My religious education teachers, friends, parents, and spirit aunts and uncles were and still are community leaders in everything from nuclear disarmament to anti-racism, anti-oppression issues. They have been my inspiration as I work to support others who are called by their faith to change hearts, minds, and communities. My church changed forever on July 27, 2008, when an armed man came into the sanctuary and killed 2 UU leaders, one a member of TVUUC and the other a member of Westside Church. This rocked our church to its core. When I first heard about it, I didn't know who had been killed, my mom, my friends and their parents, or others who had nurtured me my entire life. I realized something that day that has stayed with me ever since. No matter what issues I have with other Unitarian Universalists regarding our visions of God, spirit, justice, race, and age, at the root of everything is community, love, and faith. That day, something larger than our individual beliefs rose up in my mind. I thought of the principles, values, and family that are the connective tissue of our faith community and that held us weeks after the shooting, 6 months later on our 60th anniversary, and still today. We are part of the connective tissue that holds the legacy and future of our faith. We are the children of freedom fighters, visionaries, and radical liberal theologians. We are the phoenix rising out of the ashes of the McCarthy era and the civil rights, women's, and queer liberation movements. We are the survivors and beneficiaries of youth-led and youth-focused beliefs and programming that encouraged us to be change makers, boundary pushers, and institutionalists all at the same time. We are and will be the ministers, religious educators, congregational presidents, organizers, and social change leaders our faith has led us to be. We wear our faith as tattoos on our bodies and in our hearts as testaments to the blood, tears, dreams, and inspirations of our community ancestors and elders. Let us hold that for a moment in sacred stillness. Amen and blessed be.
We are the tradition of the Free Church. Our church and our community outreach are supported not from an outside source, but from within. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. We share what is offered every week with an organization that upholds our Unitarian Universalist values. This month, we are helping to empower the dream of the Texas UU Justice Ministry. This statewide UU ministry raises the voice of UU values, seeking to promote those values in the public square and in enacting legislation and public policy. May an offering be received in gratitude and love.
Good morning. I'm Chris Jarman, your Director of Lifespan Faith Development. My pronouns are she, her, and I want to welcome you to Faith Development this morning, talking about Fowler and how we develop our faith. We have so many opportunities today. So first, I want to tell you about something that's upcoming that we haven't advertised yet because we've just been able to pull it together, and I want you to mark your calendars. Beginning on February 21st, which is a Tuesday, 7 to 9 o'clock here at the church, Carrie, Holly Hurt, and myself will be facilitating a program from Trust called Trans Inclusion in Congregations. It will be a 6-week workshop, or 6 workshops, that will be held on the first and third Thursday. And this is a tremendous way to engage in the work of the 8th principle and working towards anti-oppression work. We invite all of you to attend. Also, I hope you got your notes going. So in room 105 this morning, you have Tim Buckley offering Voices from the Movement, and this is our 9th episode. It starts at 11:05 promptly, and we invite anyone to come in. It is a podcast and discussion. We also have membership is meeting today. So if you would like to know more about Unitarian Universalism, if you would like to know more about Live Oak, they will be meeting in room 208 upstairs. Also, now we got the big stuff. The nursery will be open until 1:30, and in case you haven't noticed, we've kind of, we're in a temporary space for our nursery right now, and it's really crowded, so we're kind of expanding out and spilling into the fellowship hall this morning. But you'll need to check in your children that are going to the nursery with Jessie LaRue in the nursery, and that is in room 106. First through 5th grade RE is in room 206. Youth are in the library. It just keeps going, right? 4th through 6th grade AL is going to be in room 203. And our kindergarten through 2nd grade AL will be in you'll start in room 205. And we're going to ask parents going upstairs to help bring food upstairs for the lunch for the orientation. So that's everything you've got. If you didn't catch all of that, that's okay. It is on the television out in the narthex. You can look there. Or you can see me, and I'll tell you where to go. So we look forward to seeing you.
But before you go, please rise as you are willing and able for our closing hymn, Bring Many Names.
And bring many names, beautiful and good, celebrated in parable and story, holiness in glory, living, loving God. Hail and Hosanna, bring many names. Old aching God, gray with endless care, calmly piercing evil's new disguises, glad of new surprises, wiser than despair. Hail and Hosanna, old aching God, young growing God, still to know, willing to be changed by what you've started, quick to be delighted, singing as you go. Hail and Hosanna, young growing God. Thank you.
We are the beneficiaries of all the work that our theological ancestors did before us. But now it is our job for those who will come after us to move even closer to this vision of being a big tent religion. May you go forward this week experiencing joy, spreading love extravagantly, and knowing that even on hard days, life is a blessing. Go in peace.
Let us say these words to each other. We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free faith, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth. And now, as we depart, we extend and receive the gift of hospitality by taking the first 5 minutes to talk to someone whom we don't yet know well. May we all know the blessings of friendship and community.